Mercedes-AMG Petronas AMG Formula AMG team, brought to you by AMG. Ciao friends and welcome back to 2Sex Ted. Today is March 2nd, 2021. Mercedes and Alpine both launched their cars today. This video is just about Mercedes. I will release my Alpine video tomorrow. Unlike Red Bull, Mercedes did actually livestream their launch, but unfortunately, unlike McLaren, they didn't get Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton to make a song for them. I'm still confused about that one. So after teasing the car on social media over the last couple of days, first as a drawing without any sponsors on, and then with some pictures and such floating around, including a seemingly mistaken selfie Valtteri Bottas took with the back of the car, which as it turns out was entirely intentional. Real quick, if you are enjoying today's video at any point, I would like to ask you to subscribe down below, hit that notification bell, and maybe while you're down there, leave me a like as well. It would really help out. Thank you very much. Mercedes properly showed off their car in a live stream late this morning, with Steve Jones, the Welshest man in Formula 1, talking to Toto Wolff, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, as well as James Allison, their technical director. Interestingly though, Mercedes did actually let Steve Jones ask proper interview questions. He didn't pull that many punches, which is surprising considering it was their event. He was at their factory. He asked Valtteri Bottas whether he was worried about his seat. He asked Lewis Hamilton why he'd only signed a one-year contract. Neither of them gave particularly interesting answers. Bottas said that he would just drive well and hope that that was enough, and Lewis Hamilton said basically the same thing he said when he did it, which is not very much. He also asked Toto Wolff whether he was worried about any of the competitors, and he basically said very little at all, except to mention the rumours that Ferrari's engine this year will be quite a big improvement. Although, that's not exactly a surprise considering they were miles off the pace. Mercedes have been continuing to work on their high-performance powertrain, however, with two bumps on either side of the car appearing just in front of the AMG logos. Which brings me to the livery itself. Much like last year, where Mercedes brought in an all-black livery as a sign of Mercedes' commitment to diversity in the sport and in the industry, as a response to the Black Lives Matter movement last year. They've kept the black livery for this year, much like they said they would, but unlike the last few years, they've dropped the star pattern from the back, replacing it with a bunch of AMG logos, which is what the introduction and thumbnail to this video are in reference to. This has caused some controversy. I mean, personally, I quite like it, but doesn't seem like that many people on the internet are too pleased with it. Personally, I think going to the black livery last year has really opened up their options. They were sort of stuck with the same silver livery for a while there. Going to the black has let them now experiment, and I think that's an interesting prospect, even if maybe this year's car isn't the best that they could possibly make. I don't think it's perfect. I think it could have been tweaked a little bit better, maybe some smaller, maybe some more AMG logos, so it feels a little bit more like a pattern. But if they're trying to promote the brand, I mean, there's only so much you can do. I feel like the Ineos red that first appeared on last year's car has been better integrated on this year's car. I'm still unsure about the front wing, however. The Petronas logo's sort of blending in there a little. I'm also not sure what's happened to the tribute to Niki Lauda. Mercedes turned one of the stars on their car red as a tribute to Niki Lauda after he died in 2018. That star appearing on the 2019 and 2020 cars as well. I'm unsure whether or not that tribute has made its way onto the 2021 car, which for any chassis name geeks is called the W12. They haven't, like McLaren or Red Bull, just stuck a letter on the end of last year's car, and they haven't, like Sauber, skipped a number. They've just iterated last year's car to the next one. W11 became W12. Interestingly, Mercedes did show the actual car from this year. However, they did cover up the floor, which is the source of most of the fundamental change this year in the regulations, as it's been cut back, originally to try and not kill the Pirelli tyre compounds, which they changed anyway. For some reason, neither Steve Jones, an F1 broadcaster, or Lewis Hamilton, an F1 driver, knew the reason for this change, even though it's been public knowledge for over a year. James Allison did say they were covering up, but didn't specifically say they were worried about another team copying it, although, considering what happened last year, they probably are. Mercedes, as always, never seeming too optimistic for the upcoming season. This attitude, though, is probably the reason they are pushing themselves as much as they are every single season, and therefore are the best. They're always worried that another team will catch them, and that's probably what drives them to keep making their car better. However, realistically, considering that this car is just an evolution of last year's car, I struggle to see who's going to be able to beat them. Red Bull with a slightly more stable rear end and Sergio Perez, it's the closest competitor. Ferrari, if they get their engine sorted, maybe. McLaren spent all of their tokens on the engine, so the car itself is not changing all that much. I can't really see anyone who's going to be able to take the fight to them. However, as the drivers, who knows, maybe it's Valtteri Bottas' season. Maybe Valtteri Bottas 17.0 will finally come true. Or maybe Sir Lewis Hamilton will just win his 8th title and become the greatest of all time. This car should be slower than last year's car due to the new regulations, but most teams estimate that this year's car should catch up as the aero developments continue to progress through the season. As with most of the launches though for this year, it is realistically just a stopgap before the fully new regulations come in next year. They did also talk about the budget cap and how that's impacting them. Toto Wolff basically said that they were focused entirely on efficiency, and to them efficiency just meant going faster. So it is likely that all things will be coming up Mercedes this year as well, but you never know. It's Formula 1, anything can happen, but it probably won't. Don't get your hopes up, is what I'm saying. What do you think of this year's car? Do you think the AMG logos are a bit weird on the back? Would you prefer the car returned to silver? Thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with the Alpine launch.